This is 1 week of growth. 1 week. Let me show you how I did it. These are my 7-week-old baby goldfish, and this is Mizuho feed. I want to see how big I can get these goldfish in 1 week with only using Mizuho feed and feeding it a lot. I want to do 5 to 6 feedings a day while doing 1, maybe even 2 full tank water changes every single day for a week, and I want to see how big I can get these fish. This is before the week of heavy feeding with Mizuho feed. This is how big the fish are. So throughout this whole week of feeding the fish, a couple things I made sure to do was I never made one feeding too large. I like to keep the feedings pretty small to medium sized, made sure they can eat them all within like a minute or two, all the pellets within a minute. Because if you overfeed them in one big feeding, they might get bloated, they might kind of get some discomfort in their belly. But I noticed if I did a lot of smaller feedings, they were okay. So I consistently just threw food in there. Every single time there was no food left, I'd sprinkle a little more. And it wasn't really like 5 or 6 feedings. Sometimes some days ended up being like 10 feedings a day. But I just consistently threw in just a little sprinkle of food every time I noticed they had eaten and it's been, a good little while since they've eaten again. I just continually threw in more and more food. Now, the thing you have to realize when doing this is they're going to create a ton of waste, okay? As much food as you're throwing in there, that's as much as they're going to poop. And you'll kill your fish. You will kill your fish if you don't change the water out. The filters cannot even handle this level of ammonia. For the days where you're feeding a lot, you might have to change the water 90% 2 times. What I did is for most days I did one 90% water change, but there were also days where I had to do 2 90% water changes. If I was doing a really heavy aggressive day, if I was feeding them a little extra more than normal, I did 2 full 90% tank water changes. That's a super important part of this. You can feed the fish all you want. They won't grow unless the water's clean. The clean water is the true limiting factor here in the growth. But when you have baby goldfish that are this size and they're young and they're vibrant and they're ready to grow, you can continually pack on the protein and continually pack on that food as long as you keep the water clean. But they definitely took in all this protein, and with the clean water, they definitely grew a ton with it. So a lot of you might be thinking, oh, what about the risks of overfeeding? Isn't overfeeding bad for your fish? You probably heard that time and time again. Oh, you don't overfeed your fish, you'll kill it. And in some ways, yes, if you feed your fish too much to a certain degree, their intestines won't be able to handle it. They will get super bloated, and that could kill them. But the number one killer from overfeeding a fish is the poor water quality. It's the result of the food. You throw a ton of food in there, if they can't get to the food and they don't eat it and it just sits there and rots, or if they eat a ton and the water quality spoils really quickly, which it will do, that will probably be the first killer than the food itself. But if you control the water cleanliness and you're constantly changing out that water, you can feed them a lot. And also something you have to realize is the younger the goldfish is, the more protein it can handle and it can absorb. When you're talking about older, more adult goldfish, this is something you're not going to really want to do or not quite as aggressively do because the older the fish is, the slower the growth is. Percentage-wise, they start slowing down in their growth, and you don't want to be packing on a super, super big ton of protein. It can kind of get hard on their kidneys. But when they're young like this, they can take it. They're meant to eat a ton of food at a young age like this. But I would be careful if your fish is older. This could be a little too aggressive, a little too harsh on them if they're an older fish. Another thing to note is that you want to have the temperature be pretty high. I would recommend maybe 79 degrees Fahrenheit is a good temperature to have these babies at. Especially when you're feeding a lot of food, it really helps the fish out if it's warmer. It really decreases the chance of them bloating and not being able to digest it. The warmer the water is, typically the higher the fish's metabolism is. Now, of course, at a certain level, when you go over 80, mid 80s, high 80s, then that's going to negatively affect the fish. There's going to be too much stress on them. But I like 78 to 80 degrees, I feel like is a good temperature range for baby goldfish to optimize that growth with there still being enough oxygen in the water, giving you have enough filtration. there's still being enough oxygen in the water for them to grow well. But yeah, you definitely want to have the temperature a little bit on the higher end because with all that food, they're going to need to have a high metabolism to break it all down. Alright, the 1 week on Mizuho feed is done. And I'm not sure how well you can tell from the camera, but these guys have actually grown a lot. There has been a significant level of growth. I'm going to hold some in my hand again so you can see a comparison from before the week. Alright, so as you recall, this is what the fish looked like before the week, and this is what they look like after the week. I know, I'm as shocked as you are, right? This is a huge difference. When they're this young, and you're throwing protein at them every single second, and you're cleaning that water out every single second, they will absorb the protein and grow like a sponge. And here's some side-by-side photos. You saw this one earlier in the video. Look at that difference. That is a huge difference in growth. I also got another one here. This one's difference in growth is not quite as crazy, but it's still crazy. But yeah, these guys grew a ton. I was shocked. I was shocked at the end of the week. I'm like, wow, this is a huge difference. Now, 1 week on Mizuho feed has delivered some results like I've really never seen before. With a heavy feeding load and a ton of water changes, these guys have grown a huge amount in a single week. And honestly, you can get pretty fast growth out of baby goldfish really using a number of different kinds of foods. But the most important factors are feeding a lot of protein and changing out a lot of water. As much of that heavy protein you're throwing out there, you gotta pull all that nitrate and ammonia and all that crap out through water changes. You're feeding them at such a high level that the filters probably can't even keep up with it, and you're removing ammonia in your water changes as well. But definitely Mizuho feed is a very high protein feed with high quality proteins. Definitely enough to get a lot of it absorbed into the bodies of these fish, because these guys were not even close to this big before this week started. Look at them now. Anyways, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, really helps my channel out, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.